the meeting of the Tennessee Tech Board of Trustees, and I'll ask Ms. Carpenter to give us a roll call.
Hilliard.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Pardue.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Sigardi. Stites.
Here.
Van Hooser.
Here.
Wilmore.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. So the most important thing we're going to do today is what we've done every time we've met, which is hear about a student and or faculty success. And so I'll ask you all to go ahead and start coming up, and I'll introduce you. I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Janet Isbell and some of her colleagues that she will introduce, but these folks have worked with the Freedom School this summer for 6 weeks at Jerry Whitson Elementary School. They made a difference, a very positive difference in the lives of 30 students here in Cookeville over the summer, and I have a personal interest in this that I just shared with these guys. So I'd like for you all, Dr. Isbell, if you would introduce your colleagues and then tell us about what happened at the Freedom School this summer.
Okay. All right, so the Freedom School Project Director is Dr. Amber Spears from the College of Education, and our site coordinator is Lindsay Brastead, and she is a graduate student in the College of Education. So just to tell you a little bit about Freedom School, it is a summer literacy and cultural enrichment program for children who are disadvantaged by poverty. We offered the program last year. We had 30 participant slots. We had 29 students who participated, and next year we hope to grow to 40 students. It is a Children's Defense Fund program, one of more than 200 sites across the country. So we feel very proud and honored to have this in the College of Education. So the program uses the Children's Defense Fund model. So we focus first of all on a rich multicultural curriculum in literacy. We also involve families. Family engagement is an important component, so our staff gets to know the families of the children in the community. We take care of their health and nutrition. We feed them twice a day and attend to things like that. We also have an intergenerational leadership model, which means we train college students not only to work with the children, but to work with the families. And then finally, there is a social action and civic engagement piece to the Freedom School. So the children actually choose a local social action project that they do themselves, and then they participate with the Freedom School in a national social action project. We teach love of books, love of learning, and we help the kids to see that they can make a difference in their world. So I'm going to let Dr. Spears tell you a little bit about the literacy aspect.
Thank you. One of the most beautiful pieces of the Freedom School is that it doesn't look like summer school in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Every morning, the children are in classrooms of one adult for every 10 children. And during that 3 morning hours, they read multicultural children's books. They explore them, and they explore these topics. How can I make a difference in myself, my family, my community, my country, my world? And then not only do they learn about it, but they learn how to take action and how to improve themselves through education, and I think that's pretty incredible. The books that the children read are new, they are relevant, and the children who we serve at Jerry Whitson get to see themselves represented in children's literature, which isn't always the case during the traditional school year, so I think that's fantastic. In addition, the children don't just listen to the books and hear them, but they are active participants with the books. And then at the end of the program, I believe every child got to take home at least 50 books to add to their home libraries. And in no small part is that, we can appreciate all the people who donated their time and money for that. And then we also know that the more books that are in a children's home, we hope that that also improves their school, they're improving their reading. So we have just had a really great experience with that, and we hope that we get to continue this next year with more and more scholars that can be part of our program. I think Lindsay is going to share with you all some of the beautiful stories that happened through Freedom School. Lindsay Braisted.
Thank you. So after we had so much fun reading really cool books and learning how to cooperate with one another in the mornings, we would do these cultural enrichment activities, and that looked like anything from ukulele lessons that the kids got to take home at the end of the program, to making yogurt, to doing some readers theater and getting to act out some of the books that they read over the summer. I think it was already touched on that we did a local social action project, and this was my very favorite part of Freedom School. We let the kids decide what we were going to do. We wanted them to be the leaders of this project, so we met with each of the classes and brainstormed what they wanted to make a difference in, what they wanted to change in their community for the better. And so what they ended up choosing unanimously was to revamp this beautiful wooden ship on their playground. And while it wasn't so beautiful at first, it had been vandalized and was kind of falling apart, and they were just so upset that this beloved ship was being destroyed, and so they wanted to show that it really mattered to them. So they decided that we were going to repaint the ship, and it was going to be repainted rainbow colors so that all of the kids wouldn't argue about which color it was going to be. I'm not joking. This was all their idea. And at the end of some of those conversations, they said, "Miss Lindsay, are we really going to do this?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." And so we had a whole day where we all got to go out and paint this beautiful ship rainbow colors, and now it's just a bright spot on their playground to remind them of the impact that they can make in Freedom School and in their lives. So it was a really special experience.
I want to add one thing. The program this past summer, our budget was $40,000. All of those funds are generated by grant writing or donations. So if anyone wants to help us out, it's about $1,300 a child. So, but our budget this year or next year will be about $46,000. So.
Well done. I can't even imagine the impact you all have had on those, and I imagine they had an impact on your lives too, it seems like, but I can't imagine the impact you all have had on those children's lives, and I hope you'll have a way to follow those children perhaps, and maybe some of them will end up as Tennessee Tech students. Let's see if we can have a report. What age group were these students?
They are rising first through fifth graders, and they do have a lot of interaction with Tennessee Tech because we ask different colleges, faculty, staff to help us with the afternoon activities, cultural enrichment. So we did have a lot of involvement from Tennessee Tech as well as from businesses and industries in the community.
Well, it's just phenomenal. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for this group? Well, I thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're following along in your agenda, you'll notice our next item is the approval of minutes, but I'm going to take a chairman's prerogative and handle a preliminary matter first. And actually two preliminary matters. First, I want to say welcome to Dr. Sally Pardue and Mason Hilliard, our newest board members. I believe this is your first board meeting. We've been together a number of times now at some informational things, but I believe this is your first time as board members, and we're very glad you're here. And Dr. Pardue and Mason were both already very engaged this morning in committee activities, and we're very glad you're here and willing to put this effort into this. We know that this is a lot of work for you, and we appreciate that. I also want to introduce our two special guests that we have here today. Senator Paul Bailey is here. Is he still here? Oh, there he is. Yes, Senator Paul Bailey. And another good friend of the university, Representative Ryan Williams, is here. So Representative Williams. And then I'll just thank, in advance of their reports, I'm going to thank Johnny Stites and Radonna Rose for stepping up as the new chairman of our respective committees, and you'll be hearing from them today. So thanks to all of you. And then I had another matter I wanted to cover. We had two individuals whose roles have changed from this board in the last 6 months or so, 3 months. And these are both individuals who helped to set the course and the tone for this board and for this university probably forever, because they were inaugural members of this board. And I'm going to speak about each of them separately, and then I think we have a little presentation to make. But let me start by talking about Dr. Melissa Geist, and I believe she's here. If you'll wait just a minute to come up, Melissa, but we want you to come up, but just give me a minute to... I get to say what I want to say, and then you get to say what you want to say. Dr. Geist was our inaugural faculty rep to the Tennessee Tech Board of Trustees, and that came with a whole lot of responsibilities and opportunities that I'm not sure she understood completely, but she embraced them completely. In case you don't know, her day job is to convert mortals into nurses, which makes her somebody very, very special. She does that very well. Nursing is compassionate problem solving, and I think she did a great job of that while she was on our board. She was relentless in her efforts to educate this board of non-academics. Sally, you weren't on it yet, so this is the board of non-academics on the world of academia. And she expressed the passions and the goals of the faculty. And I think our board was very blessed to have Melissa and her involvement and her leadership at the time that she was here. I'm so very glad that she was our inaugural board member. And our students will continue to be blessed by her involvement on the faculty. And I know Dr. Oldham wants to say a couple of things as well, and then we have a little presentation for Melissa.
Yeah, I just wanted to certainly add my congratulations and thanks to Melissa for 2 wonderful years on the board. It was a very special time starting a board from scratch, and so we were all sort of learning as we went, and Melissa's role as a faculty representative was incredibly important, and she served with great distinction, so I certainly congratulate her and thank her for her service.
So please join me in thanking Melissa. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to say anything? Okay, we're going to give you... She said, I've only got downside in that. And I have comments to make about one other person who didn't get quite as far away as Melissa. Tom Jones was our inaugural chairman of the Board of Trustees, and Tom is the perfect example of, if you need something done, give it to someone who's busy. Because Tom was asked to and stepped up to chair this board at a time when he was the CEO of his own company. He was in the process of some pretty major business opportunities and still made time to make the university a real priority. As the first chair of the first board of trustees, Tom set a tone of professionalism, efficiency, and candor, and he reminded us all to stay student-focused. And Tom started the tradition, and I hope we'll always continue it, of starting our board meetings with a focus on faculty and students and excellence in those areas, and we're all very grateful. Tom's leadership is going to bear fruit for our students for generations to come. I'm very confident of that. Every other chairman of this board, and Johnny used these words this morning, and it's interesting because I had planned to use them as well, but every chairman of this board, including me and everyone who will come after me, will be standing on the shoulders of Tom Jones because he gave us a great example of leadership. And we're delighted that Tom is remaining on the board and on the executive committee, and I know he will provide great counsel to me, as he always has, through these next couple of years. So, and then Dr. Oldham, did you want to say something about Tom?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm a big believer in timing of opportunities, and I can't imagine a better individual than Tom to kick us off with this board for the last 2 years. Always been a great friend to the university and supporter, and this is just one more example of giving back in a very meaningful way. And I certainly personally appreciate. I've appreciated the relationship personally with Tom, and he's been a great friend to me and a help in a lot of tough times. So I appreciate it, Tom.
Please join me in thanking Tom. Thank you all for your patience. And so now we will take up the official business of the board, and we will start with the approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, those from June the 20th, 2019, regular meeting, and then we had an August 21st, 2019 special meeting. Can we take both of those minutes at the same time? Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or any corrections to either set of those minutes? Hearing none, those will, we do a roll call vote for that? Okay. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Those pass. All right, we have a president's report. Dr. Oldham?
While he's walking up, I just wanted to say thank you so much for those kind words. I almost feel like I attended my own funeral. Could you save that? And thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure to stand before the board and give a report. And I'm particularly pleased today to be joined by Senator Paul Bailey and Representative Ryan Williams. They didn't expect me to say this, but I can't think of 2 more better individuals to help support the work here at Tennessee Tech, and they've been incredible advocates on our behalf in Nashville, and I can't appreciate them enough. So I thank them for coming today and what they do each and every day on our behalf. My first comment will actually echo something Trustee Harper said at one of our recent informational meetings on enrollment. I think that was her first meeting to chair on behalf of the board, and she said something to the effect that we need to always act like a major university. I too believe that. I believe that we need to be proud of everything that we do and show it in everything we do. The faculty, staff, and students of this university deserve to be treated big league because that's who we are. And so I hope my report today echoes that sentiment, and I hope everything that we do continues to echo that. I'm also proud to say that Governor Lee will be essentially on campus later this week on Thursday. He'll be in Cookeville to speak at the College of Business Fall Celebration Dinner. Some of you will no doubt be in attendance. I hope any of you that are in the area can attend. We certainly continue to appreciate the governor's support of higher education, and particularly look forward to collaborating with the governor in his rural initiative. As you know, that we've accepted that on the campus as a grand challenge here to address and try to provide some leadership in rural initiatives for the state of Tennessee, and we're excited about that. You've already heard in committees this morning related to our business affairs, financial situation, which is in good shape and continuing to improve, and we're excited about that. We're not in the position today to be proposing a salary increase. We intend to be forthcoming with that at the December meeting if things continue as expected. If that's in fact the case, that this will be the 8th consecutive year of salary increases for this campus, which is something that's very important to me personally to continue. It's always been a priority, and we'll continue to make that a priority to reward this faculty and staff for the excellent work that they do and will continue to do. We've received some really good news in recent weeks. U.S. News and World Report rankings were released for this year, and Tennessee Tech is once again ranked among the top national universities in the nation. Just to give you a little bit of context here, U.S. News and World Report provides rankings on national universities, so those are all the major universities across the country, some, I think, roughly 400 or more universities in the national category, and due to our Carnegie classification as a doctoral research institution, that's the category we fit in. They also rank regional universities. We once were in those categories. We're no longer ranked in those because we're in the national category. So we're in the same classification, particularly on the national public universities, with University of California, Berkeley, UCLA, University of Virginia, and you can run down the list. We are one of only 3 public universities in Tennessee that have a numerical national ranking by U.S. News and World Report, and we came in at 135 among national public universities. So it's a great category to be in. It's we're playing in the biggest field possible with the biggest players, and we're actually ranked among them. So I'm excited about that. That again attests to the great work of the faculty and staff of this campus. I appreciate what they do. To dig into that just a little bit, and I've got a few slides to show you. I've learned from my current chairman, don't bury the lead, and so I'm gonna talk about this a little bit. And these slides, I would put a heading on these slides as this is the true Tennessee Tech story. This is our story, and it all has to do with students. It's all about how students benefit from what we do on this campus each and every day. So I'll hit on these fairly quickly, but we'll certainly have time to ask questions if you want to dig any deeper. Among Tennessee public universities, we rank 2nd in the state in terms of student retention rate, the rate at which first-year students come back for their 2nd year. And you can see from this particular graph, over the last 10 or 11 years, it's bounced around a little bit, but we're consistently now above 75% first-year retention rate. This year we bounced back up to 77%. Our goal that I'll get to in just a minute is 82%. By 2025, we want to have a first-year retention rate of 82%. This one excites me even more, and that's graduation rates. I'll talk about this just for a minute. The national standard for graduation rate is to report a 6-year rate. Now, it sounds a little funny probably to you. Most of us probably thought about graduating in less than 6 years, and most of us probably did. But the 6-year rate is considered 1.5 times the normal length of time that it takes to graduate, and that's what the feds report. So although our 6-year rate continues to get better, we're up around 55% now, which is a record high for Tennessee Tech. I want you to pay attention to the other two curves here. One is the 5-year retention rate that continues to improve. In fact, you see that there's not a big gap between our 5-year graduation rate now and the 6-year, which is good. That means a big chunk of our students are finishing in 5 years. And keep in mind, the way you characterize this is it's a freshman cohort. So freshmen that come in 1 year, how many of that particular group of students graduate within 4, 5, or 6 years? Okay, but the 4-year graduation rate, and that's where I want to direct your attention, is at an all-time record high for Tennessee Tech. We surpassed 37% this year for a 4-year graduation rate. Our goal for 2025 is to surpass 50% for a 4-year graduation rate. And I'll tell you real quick why this is important. For every year that we reduce the amount of time a student spends in school, that's approximately a $75,000 or $80,000 benefit to that student. The average cost, when you factor in living expenses as well as tuition and fees, is about $20,000 to $25,000 a year. So you're saving that, but you're also entering the workforce a year earlier. The average starting salary for a Tennessee Tech graduate now is something like $56,000 a year. So it's about a $75,000 or $80,000 difference to that student and their family for any year we can shave off of the time to degree. So we want to continue to push this 4-year graduation rate and see as many students graduate in that period of time as possible, because they're the ones that benefit from it. But we're on the right path. And so as of now, about 40% of our, we could say about 40% of our incoming freshmen this year will graduate in the next 4 years. The other thing that's not on this graph, and I excluded it purposefully because the numbers are relatively small, and so it would throw the graph off a little bit scaling-wise, but it's very important to note we're actually seeing a significant increase and a relatively significant number of students that are graduating in 3 years now. It's something over 2.5% of our incoming freshmen are now graduating in 3 years as opposed to 4 or 5 or 6. Again, that's a significant financial benefit to those students and their families, and it's probably the biggest way that we can impact what you hear in the news on a regular basis about the cost of higher education, and is it worth the expense. And I think we're proving over and over again here at Tennessee Tech that it is worth the expense, and we're doing a great job at managing those costs to make it pay off. We also, before I hit on this one, I'm sorry, I went backwards, we have the second highest ACT range in the state. I overlooked second highest graduation rate. We have the highest number of classes with less than 20 students on campus. And this one speaks to the benefit, again, of education at Tennessee Tech. The typical debt, we're actually the lowest in terms of typical debt of students at graduation. About 47% of our students graduate debt-free, free of any debt at all, but the typical debt is about $16,500, and you can see that's by far the lowest among public universities in the state of Tennessee by a pretty good margin, and you can see the list of those here. And then in bar graph form, it's even a little more dramatic probably to see where we rank. So again, the value of a Tennessee Tech degree is substantial, and we're doing a good job at maintaining those costs. And then you compare that with the median starting salaries of Tennessee Tech graduates. We're the highest among Tennessee public universities in terms of starting salaries. So over $55,000 on average. And again, you see a pretty significant gap between us and others in the state. So we're graduating students on time. We're saving them money in the cost of an education. They're graduating with the least amount of debt in the state, and it's paying off in terms of great starting salaries. So, you know, when we talk a lot about metrics in board meetings, and I'm all for metrics. To me, these are the most important metrics we have, because this tells our story. This tells what the impact we're having as an institution on the students and the future of workforce in Tennessee. So I appreciate being able to do that. It's a great story to tell, and we're going to try to find ways to tell it even more so as time goes on. I'll hit real quickly on enrollment. You got an enrollment report in committee this morning from Dr. Johnson. We graduated over 2,500 students last year. That was another record for us. And so in order to maintain a pretty stable enrollment, that meant we had to bring in an additional 2,500 students to replace those that graduated. And that's exactly what we did. We brought in something just over 1,700 new first-time freshmen and about 800 transfer students. So about 2,500 new students have been welcomed to the campus this fall with an enrollment census headcount of 10,140. So down just a couple of dozen overall from last year, but we clearly met all the expectations budgetarily and about where we expected to fall. Actually, probably a little bit better than where we expected to end up enrollment-wise, and so we're excited about that. And we really believe that we're probably at an inflection point now. We'll see where we'll start to see enrollments start to grow back up. And some of that is because we had a couple of years of pretty small freshman classes. Those bubble years are sort of percolating through the system now, and we've been bringing in slightly larger freshman classes the last couple of years. And if we continue that trend, we should see the enrollment grow back. A lot of other great things that I'll report on real briefly here. We did this past summer, we officially surpassed our $60 million Tennessee Tech Tomorrow campaign goal. We were able to do that 2 years ahead of schedule. And so we do have a celebration coming up. We'll celebrate that at the Evening of Thanks on October 11th and officially celebrate that conclusion of the campaign. We will continue to raise money, particularly for special focus areas such as the new engineering building and scholarships and some other areas that we continue to have pressing needs in. But as far as the original campaign goals, most of that has already been met, and we're excited about that. We'll turn our attention to other areas going forward. We're also happy to announce that this past year we set a record for sponsored research activity. We activated over $20 million in grants and contracts on this campus, $20.2 million to be exact, and that represents about an 18% increase over the previous record high. So that's a pretty big jump, and the trajectory on those numbers continues to improve. We're seeing more and more faculty actively engaged in research, submitting fundable proposals, competitive proposals, and we're excited about the direction we're heading there. It wasn't in my notes, but last year was also a record in terms of number of graduates, PhD graduates. I think we've graduated 26 PhD students this past year, and we're already on track to do that or better this year, I believe. So excited about that. And a lot of that's connected. The funding, sponsored research funding levels are directly correlated with PhD graduates, and so we'll continue to see those improve. The Tennessee Higher Education Commission this summer gave final approval to two new academic programs that this board passed on last year, approved, and that was to degree programs, an online master's in engineering management and a fourth PhD program for the campus, fifth doctoral program. This one is a PhD in counseling and supervision. So both of these programs are in the process of being implemented, and we look forward to initiating the first students in both those programs in the next few months. We have met, gone through a design competition to select the design team for our new engineering building, first engineering building on this campus in 50 years. Look forward to that. Look forward to going through full design this year. We anticipate the legislature being able to complete the state amount of funding for that project this next spring. But we're really excited about this project. It's going to open up a lot of opportunities for us on this campus and really support our signature programs in engineering. So it's a great project. That design team will be selected by the State Building Commission based on recommendations that have been made from the campus, and so we anticipate a design team being in place here in just the next very few weeks and be off and running. As far as other construction projects going on campus, the new fitness center, we're in the last few months of that project. The completion date is moving around a little bit on us, so I'm reluctant to give an exact date of that. We anticipate being able to start moving in, though, late this spring. I've walked through that project a number of times. It's a wonderful facility. The students are going to love this place, and I hope they don't forget to study some while they're at it. It's a really an excellent facility, and it'll put us in good position as we start recruiting next year's students as well. For the lab sciences building, that completion date will sort of come in stages. The lecture hall facility should be completed by this next fall, so we'll be having classes in the new lecture hall facility. As you might recall, it's a detached portion of that project, so it's sort of two separate buildings, but they're in the same construction project. So we'll be teaching lectures in that facility this next fall in August. And the rest of the building should be available sometime in the fall, possibly October, for us to start moving in the main part of the building. Again, that's going to be a signature facility for the sciences on this campus and make some really positive statements. We continue to improve landscaping on campus. I hope you, if not today, otherwise you get a chance to walk around campus a little bit and see some of those improvements that we made in terms of landscape. We have now a new signage plan to improve campus signage, both entry signs to the main thoroughfares into campus, to designate those and really mark the boundaries of the campus, but also wayfinding signage, so when you're on campus, and particularly for visitors, if you want to know how to get to certain buildings, you have a better ability to navigate the campus appropriately. I do also want to report briefly about the Grand Challenge, the Rural Reimagined initiative. We're off and running on that really quickly. There's about 15 courses this fall that have been built into the curriculum that students are engaged in some type of activity related to Rural Reimagined. So it's about 300 students that are actively engaged in meaningful ways related to the rural initiative. So I'm sure I'll be able to report in the next meeting or two some significant progress that's continuing with the Grand Challenge. As I've indicated before to the board, our primary focus for this year is going to be around enrollment, recruitment, retention, and overall student success. We have a number of initiatives going on there, one of which is coming up pretty quickly, our Fall Preview Day, which is a major recruiting opportunity for the campus on October 5th. That's Saturday, October 5th. Right, currently we have over 800 students, and a total of almost 2,000 family members have already been pre-registered. for that event. So we expect a large gathering on campus that day. Certainly, it's in terms of campus, it's all hands on deck, and it's been a great collaboration. It's a great opportunity for enrollment management staff to interact with faculty and staff across campus to really put our best foot forward and showcase the wonderful opportunities that are available here at Tennessee Tech on a regular basis. The only thing we can't control there is the weather, and so we're hopeful for good weather and to be able to really showcase what's going on here at Tech. So I'll conclude with the goals that I've laid out for the campus this fall, and these I'm looking sort of on a 5 or 6 year horizon. So by the year 2025, here are the goals that I've put out before the campus this fall. We want to be above 12,000 students at Tennessee Tech, a total head count of over 12,000 students, with a minority enrollment goal of 22%. We're up a little bit this fall. We're around 16-17% total minority enrollment, but we're going to strive to hit 22% by 2025. I've already mentioned a freshman to sophomore retention rate of 82%, 4-year graduation rate of 50%. We want to continue to grow online programs. You'll hear more of that as time goes on, and put a lot of effort in strengthening our career development, the student to career process. Not just, we love graduating students, but we're in it for the long haul. We want to make sure students are on path for an outstanding and a very successful career. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure we do everything possible to help them get there and to be with them as they go through their career. We know that the nature of work is going to continue to change dramatically, and the need and opportunity for adult learners to constantly be re-educated and retrained as technologies change, as economies change, is going to get increasingly important in the world of the future. And so we've got to direct our attention in that way, and the student to career incorporates all those concepts. We want to continue our push in sponsored research, so we've set a goal to double our now record high of $20 million to hit $40 million in sponsored research by 2025. And lastly, to be recognized, to be seen and recognized throughout the state of Tennessee as the champion and center for excellence regarding the future of rural Tennessee communities, to really make a difference, to help move the needle and play an integral part in what the future of rural Tennessee looks like, and how they base their new economies and their educational attainment, health care, and down the list. So this is a pretty significant list. It's an ambitious list of goals. I fully believe they're all achievable, but they're not achievable unless we put in a very significant and deliberate effort. It's going to take all of us, including the board. And I want to thank the board for your continual support and encouragement as we market and recruit prospective students and their families and serve the entire state of Tennessee to meet the needs of the future. So with that, I'll conclude my report, Chairman, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
That was an excellent report. Obviously, lots of good news in that report. Are there any questions or comments for the president? Yes, Tom.
That's really great news in so many areas, but just curious in a general term, when you worry about the university, what keeps you up at night?
Speed. I think being able to move fast enough is always my concern, because I'm absolutely convinced that we can do this job and we can do it well. In fact, I think we can do it better than most everybody else, quite honestly. but again, it takes us to make it a priority and to be willing at times to let other things go in order to stay focused on what we need to do next. And so I probably, what keeps me awake is, are we up to that challenge of continuing to push and never being satisfied? I mean, the worst thing that could happen to us, I think, is to become satisfied or content. And so that's really what worries me the most.
A great question. Are there other questions or comments for Donna? Did you have something?
Yes, and I like all of the goals, and certainly the attention to trying to get students graduated sooner. I think that's very, very good. It's always kind of bothered me of that 6-year time frame too. I am curious, and I may be the only one that doesn't know this, but if a student takes off 6 months or a year to do a school-sponsored internship, does that add to their time of graduation? Or if they finish 4 years in school time plus the intern, are they considered a 5-year student?
Yeah, the way and that's really a federal metric, and so you take the students that come in as a cohort in 1 year and basically say, okay, how many of those particular students that came in that year graduate 4, 5, or 6 years later? And so in that regard, in terms of reporting requirements, that's what we're obligated to do. That's the standard, and that's the way you would compare to other institutions. So in a way, it's a measure of institutional effectiveness or efficiency. Now, it is obviously true that there are students, for very good reasons, like you mentioned, internships, and we want to encourage internships. We want to encourage co-op opportunities because we know that work experience, particularly in the discipline where the student is studying, is maybe one of the most meaningful career-building opportunities for that particular individual. So it's something we want to encourage. I believe that that's why I wouldn't necessarily say we should expect a 4-year graduation rate significantly higher than 50%. I think it will accommodate that. We still will continue to encourage internships, and it will hurt us a little bit on the graduation rate data. We can always, for internal purposes, and if the board would like that, we can always try to exclude those students at some point, just for internal purposes, to say, okay, if we take out those students from that cohort that stopped out for good reasons, like an internship, what would that graduation rate be? And that would have internal meaning for us. So it's a really good question.
It's an excellent question with our concentration in engineering where so many people do co-ops. I think that's a much more relevant question. Any other questions or comments for the president? Yes, Tom?
Just to comment on that, between the 4, 5, 6-year graduation rates, I mean, personally to me, I know the push is for the 4-year, but to me the 5-year really should be the most important goal, and the reason is that I do think all students should do study abroad, should do internships, should do maybe some sort of co-op. To me, that even 5th-year graduation student is a more rounded student than the one that just pushes through and gets out 4 years academically.
I don't argue that point at all. I agree.
The only other comment I wanted to make too, and looking at the graph with the graduation rates up there, you have the if you go back, I mean, the 5th-year rate, the purple there, was going up dramatically, and you know that the 5th-year and 6-year graduation rates are going to track really, really close. So you can already predict that your 6-year graduation is going to probably go up at least 2%.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, a really good story too that's not visible on the graph yet, but it will be.
Yeah, it will.
And then, you have such a big gap, I think, between the 4-year and the 5-year, and I think it is because of other programs. I would like to see the university do more and promote more study abroad, co-ops, internships, which will focus more on the 5th year.
Yeah, it's that, and it's any kind of change that students. We know that roughly about 50% of our students will change majors at least once in their academic career. And so you get some slippage between 4 and 5 years by changing majors. And there's often other life events that come into play that planned or otherwise that affect that. But I think the story here is that it's all moving in the right direction, and I think for the right reasons. This is one part of the story. You know, the other part you guys have talked about as well is, you know, what's the real value of that, and are there experiential learning opportunities that help round them out and actually make them even more competitive once they graduate, and that's very true.
And I know it's not something we typically talk about, but I almost wish we could look at, too, a conversion from undergraduate to graduate. Because our graduate programs, I think, need to grow and increase. Yeah. And even our undergraduates that go to graduate school typically don't go here, especially in engineering. And I wish we could focus on that a bit.
Yeah, we'll.
I mean, retaining undergraduates to graduate is an incredible way to increase and preserve your enrollment. And I don't know, I think it's an opportunity that you should push.
It is. And there's at least a couple ways of thinking about that. You know, a lot of faculty, a lot of institutions actually will discourage students from staying at the same institution for all their degrees. But in some cases, it's the right thing to do. And we certainly there's a lot of examples of very successful professionals who have done undergraduate and graduate work at the same institution and done exceptionally well. So it's in our particular case, I think there is definitely room to grow in that regard, and there is opportunity for our undergraduates to stay on here for graduate programs. To some extent, we also have to continue to push the right mix of graduate programs that attract them and help make that possible as well. So that's a great comment also. I'm glad to know that our graduate enrollment, essentially flat, is up just a little bit this year. One thing that's kind of buried in there, though, is the PhD enrollment has grown pretty substantially in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's a good trend for this campus. I think we've got about 180 or maybe close to 200 PhD students total now on campus, which is really a good sign.
Donna. So I'm going to go back to the internship because I'm a real believer in it as well. And you offered to maybe track how many of the students were 5-year students because of interns. I think that would be a really good number to see. And I think kind of along with that, if we could maybe follow up how many of those students that do internships then end up having jobs in their field of study once they graduate.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think that would be a real selling point for students to look at that opportunity when they're going through school, and as Mr. Jones said, not just rush straight on through.
Yeah, in fact, there's a lot of good thinking coming out of our strategic planning group now on campus about how to put a little more emphasis on internships and co-op opportunities and encourage more students in that regard. So hopefully you'll hear a lot more about that in the future. I'm trying to explore some ways where we can encourage more companies to locate near or even on campus to do on-campus internship programs so that students can get good work experience, practical work experience while they're still here on campus. And I think we could actually increase the numbers substantially. A lot of times students aren't capable of doing an external internship for monetary reasons, financial reasons, or other personal reasons. So the more of that we can bring within the educational context of the campus in close proximity, that's great for the companies, that's great for the students. It's a great way to move forward. I think you'll see a lot more of that in higher education in future years. I think you'll see more blending of public and private opportunities that help create those opportunities for students.
Excellent discussion. Any further comments or questions? Well, Dr. Oldham, again, that was an excellent report, so thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
We'll appreciate that. The next item on our agenda is actually the certification of the president's responsibilities related to athletics. This one's kind of funny to me. Those of you who have the full board packet, you see the letter that I actually was required to sign and send to the Ohio Valley Conference. This is required to be signed by the chairman of the board and submitted, and reported to the board of trustees. So I'm reporting to you that I have acknowledged to the OVC that our president, CEO, has the authority, he has been delegated the authority to, for the administration of all athletics for the school, that he has the mandate and support of the board to operate the athletics program in a program of integrity, and that he determines the institutional vote in all issues presented to the NCAA and the Ohio Valley Conference. And why this is funny to me is that I cannot even spell NCAA, so I'm very glad to know that the president has this under control, because if I were your responsible party to do this, I'm afraid you would all be in dire straits, and Mark, it would be really, really bad for our athletics program. So we're fortunate to have a president who is interested and involved in all things athletics, and so I appreciate that. So I have now attested to that and presented that attestation to you. So does anyone have any questions? Thank you for having no questions. I now have an executive committee report. The executive committee met on August the 21st, and we took up a couple of matters. Well, actually, we took up one matter, and then I have one other matter to report. We took up the matter of the appointment of Dr. Francis Otunye to the position of Interim Vice President for Research and Economic Development. I'm sorry, I just blanked. Dr. Harville Eaton, thank you. I'm sorry, I just had a moment, senior moment. Dr. Harville Eaton has retired, and we were without a Vice President of Research and Economic Development, and Dr. Oldham recommended, and the Executive Committee affirmed the recommendation of Dr. Francis Otunye. Dr. Otunye, I saw you earlier. There you are. Can you stand and just be acknowledged, make sure everyone knows who you are? We thank you for doing this. I want to say a personal thank you to Dr. Otunye, because he is taking on the responsibility for the research effort at a time when we're really digging deep and looking at our research policies and considering our research efforts as a more holistic effort. And Dr. Otunye and I had an opportunity to meet along with a number of other folks fairly recently, and had a very in-depth conversation about that. And so I very much appreciate his attention to this. He has a real passion for this, and I think we've got a great individual in this role. So I thank you for that. And then the other thing I need to report on from the Executive Committee is that the Executive Committee, as the board knows, did our evaluation of the president, our annual evaluation of the president's performance. The board all had an opportunity to have input in that, along with the cabinet, and we used all the faculty evaluations as well. I took all of that, worked with the Executive Committee, and then the president and I met 2 separate times, one time in person for most of a day, and another time for several hours by phone, and we kind of iterated through what we believe are the right priorities for the president for the next year. So that is complete. I don't have a recommendation on salary increases at this time for the president, because he has asked that we wait until we make a decision for the university to make a salary increase recommendation before we make any decision about his salary action as well. So I would expect we would talk about this again in December, because I believe that's when we expect to have a recommendation for the full university staff and faculty for salary actions. Does anyone have any questions about that? I will entertain questions about that if you have. Very good. All right, well, before we get into our committee reports, I want to just mention that we had committee meetings this morning. For the executive committee met in August, but our academic and student affairs committee met this morning, our finance and audit committee met this morning, and you're going to hear reports from both of those. I want to be sure everyone knows that we have really fulsome conversations in those meetings about the topics that we're going to report on here, because all of us were in those meetings this morning. Sometimes we short-circuit that just a little bit in the interest of time, but I don't want anyone who wasn't here this morning to have missed out. So if you have some interest in that, you can look at the minutes of those meetings or ask questions in these meetings of the reports. But with that said, I'm going to ask Radonna Rose to give the report on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I will try to be quick but cover the things that are important to cover. We did have 3 staff updates this morning. We didn't have any action that required votes, but we had 3 staff updates. The first one from Provost Bruce, and she gave us an update on ongoing initiatives and activities related to student success and professional development. She talked about some leadership development workshops, and she also filled us in on what's happening with the Center for Advancing Faculty Excellence. She also talked about the establishment of her Provost Advisory Committee and how that's working, and the input that she's getting from a very diverse perspective of students and faculty. And in addition, she shared with the group that she has been nominated and is serving on THEC's Leadership Innovation Fellows, and we're proud of her for that position. So congratulations to her. Dr. Johnson then gave us the enrollment update. Our undergraduates slightly down and graduate numbers are slightly up. He also, very similar to what Dr. Oldham talked about just a few minutes ago, told us about some of the freshman recruitment activities and the upcoming Saturday event that we're going to be having on October the 5th. He talked about student messaging and marketing as far as recruitment's concerned and what we're doing as far as that's concerned. Then Mark Burnett talked about diversity initiatives, the establishment of a new position of a Chief Diversity Officer, also a Director of Multicultural Affairs. He gave us an update on our fundraising campaign for scholarships for diverse and underrepresented students. We're at $1.1 million now, headed toward a $2 million goal. He also talked about the establishment of a admissions position specifically focused on the diverse populations that we have out there. So those were the things we covered in academic and student affairs today.
If you don't mind, I'm going to embellish, because I thought Mr. Burnett made a great comment about diversity when he talked about being intentional and specific in our recruitment of diverse students, similar to the way we recruit athletes. And I thought that was really a very helpful analogy to me. Are there any other questions or comments for the Academic and Student Affairs Committee? Thank you very much, Ms. Rose. Mr. Stites, will you give us the report on the Audit and Business Committee, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman, we had a great meeting this morning. We talked about 2 areas. The first was employee performance evaluation analysis, and the committee had reviewed the performance evaluation for both faculty and staff. Dr. Leslie Krickenberger presented a 3-year trend of average scores and performance increases for faculty and staff. I think it was clear that from the governor's initiative to this board, we are wanting to recognize performance and pay for performance. And we hope to, if there is any, and I don't know that there is any who are not performing out there in our university, that they'll leave and go somewhere else. We want to take the money that we have, the resources we have, and encourage people who are providing for these students an experience that they can't get anywhere else. And I'm glad to be a part of that. The committee was pleased to see a trend indicating progress being made toward rewarding high performers. We think that's so important if we're going to keep the brightest and best, not just in our faculty, but in the staff and the administration as well. I thought we had a good report in there, that area. The second item we dealt with was a 5-year strategic financial plan update, and we received that update, and it showed progress had been made over the last year to reinstate the operating fund balance, establish an investment pool, and reallocate resources toward new programs, which was exciting. And Dr. Stinson did a good job in providing the committee with information that related to items that will be considered in the revised budget. So I think all in all, we got a good report on the finances. We also got a good report on any audits that had transpired, and I think the university's in great shape at this point. Glad to report that to the group.
We thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Stites. We did have a great report on all of those things this morning. All right.
The next item I would bring up would be the naming of the Learning Resource Center. There was a recommendation, a proposal of the naming of that resource centers in honor of Horace M. Jake Jeffers, who was quite an educator in the Scott County area. And I think it's interesting that we had 2 people from Scott County this morning. So it's great that we have these people who are stepping up and passing on the blessings they received from Tennessee Tech, and their family members, I think, were the ones that are actually honored them with the money that it took to name this building after them. The second was the naming of the alumni building, and that was what everybody knows is the Varsity Cinema, and the new name for that will be the Varsity Building. So we're excited about that because there are many memories. I got the idea from hearing from our chairman that there were some really intimate moments in that cinema. I don't know how that occurred. You said you had some great memories. So
My greatest memory, my greatest intimacy was with Richard Gere in An Officer and a Gentleman, and that was about as intimate as he got. But anyway.
Yeah, he was pretty much fun in that movie. So I need to get a roll call vote on these 2, and then there's one other one that we'll do, and that is the Lab Science Lecture Hall, and that was recommended to be named for Mr. Stonecipher, Harry Stonecipher. He's also been a great supporter of Tennessee Tech, and I think we can do all those in one motion, can we not?
Ms. Carpenter says we can, so if you would, I'd entertain a motion to approve those 3 names of the new centers and buildings.
Well, on behalf of the committee, I also move that we name these 3 buildings after the people that were recommended by the committee, the Audit Business Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Is there any discussion? I think I should just mention that we had a long discussion this morning about the significance of gifts like this that make it to the point where we have someone that we can name a building or a center for, and we just want to be very, very clear how grateful we are to those families and to the individuals who have made that kind of commitment, not just financially, but through their efforts over the years. So,
And I think also we were cognizant of the fact that not only is it our responsibility to name these buildings after these people because of what their families or they have done, but also that we should protect those names going forward into the future, so that if a building is later turned into a different service or torn down because it's been around too long, that the memory of that gift and that participation in the university will be solidified somewhere else on the campus and recognized.
Just to
Yes,
clarify,
Tom.
the Learning Resource Center is actually a center that we are naming and not a building. And that resource center does exist within another building, just for
Correct.
clarification.
Yes.
And the varsity building is a building, but there can be other things named inside of that.
And there is actually
there is.
now, do you have one now?
And then I guess the lecture hall, the Stone Cipher Lecture Hall is actually a lecture hall within a building.
Right.
But
Right.
all of that's in the motion as we understand it, correct?
Well, I think the hall, the last one, is a building.
Is it?
It's a
Okay.
separate building,
Clear.
because we're trying to name all buildings halls, if I understand, right, Mr. President? So once we establish these traditions in our actions, then I think we'll continue to carry those on through.
Is there any further discussion or questions about the motion? I'll just repeat the names of the buildings and centers. The Learning Resource Center would be named the Horace M. Jeffers Learning Resource Center. The Alumni Building would be changed to the Varsity Building. And I've just lost my page, I'm sorry. And the Lab Science Lecture Hall would be changed to the Stone Cipher Hall. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, we need a roll call. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, that carries unanimously. All right, I have one other order of business, and that is to announce that we have an informational session for the board scheduled for November the 12th from 8:30 to 10:30. The topic, as it was listed in the email to the board members, was a little bit cryptic if you weren't already involved in this discussion. It was about auxiliaries and ancillaries. And so this is really about the relationship between the university as a corporation, or as a, I don't know if we're a corporation, university as a entity, as a public entity, and its relationship with the foundation board, with Tech Farm, with the, what are some of the other ancillaries? I think housing and food and some of those catering, some of those other business relationships that we have. What did I leave out, Clary? Golf course, thank you, the golf course. So that we understand our role vis-a-vis these other business entities that exist on their own. So that meeting is again scheduled for November the 12th. That is open, right? Okay, to anybody who wants to listen in. It's very enlightening to hear the board members ask dumb questions about these important topics, because we are learning. These informational sessions, by the way, have been super. And those of you who've already done one, I know Dr. Johnson did one. I'm blanking. Clary did one. Dr. Stinson did one the time before. Those are the only two we've done so far. They've been super. And we had a meeting recently with all the other trustees of the other LGIs, and this seems to be a model that other people are starting to pick up as well, because it's a model where we can talk about things and ask things in a setting where it's open, but we're not actually deliberating. We're just getting information. So, yeah. Hang on just a second. Thank you. We have a clarification on our last motion, and I'm actually going to, I don't know the best way to do this. Can we just amend the last motion and because I think we need maybe we need a whole new emotion where we just say we want to approve the names of the buildings as we said them, which were the Varsity Building, the Horace M. Jeffers Learning Resource Center, and the Stone Cipher Lecture Hall. I left the word lecture out of that when I quoted what everything was going to be.
I make a motion that we correct the last motion and amend it to say Stone Cipher Lecture Hall.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, thank you all very much, and thank you for catching that, whoever caught it. I appreciate that, because we were about to mess something up that was really important. Okay, is there any further business to come before the board? Well, I want to be sure and I didn't thank earlier, and I should have, Dr. Sandy Smith-Andrews, who's our new Faculty Senate President. We're glad that you're here and appreciate your efforts, and we look forward to a good year of working with the Faculty Senate. We had a great Faculty Senate breakfast this morning. For those of you who are on the Faculty Senate, if you haven't been coming to breakfast with us, it's delicious, and sometimes you actually get to have real business conversation, which we did at our table, and so we appreciate that. Is there anything else that anybody needs to cover with the board? All right, then we will stand adjourned. Thank you.